What it is, my 10 piece of grease here, and while we have been waiting for an update for console, I decided to partake in some missions that I have largely ignored. Those missions being the Arcana Bounties. Now, if you weren't aware, basically the way these Arcana Bounties work is that there are three of them, which is no coincidence because there are three isolation bolts. In order for you to gain access to bounty number 1, you must clear isolation bolt number 1. To gain access to bounty number 2, you must clear isolation bolt number 2, and finally to gain access to bounty number 3, you must clear isolation bolt number 3. Not only that, you're not going to be able to see these bounties in the Necrolisk. You're going to have to actually come out into the open world, Cambion Drift, and you're going to have to go to the specific vault location that has the bounty you want. So, if you were wanting Bounty 2, for example, you would have to go to Isolation Bolt 2's location. If you wanted Bounty 1, you would have to go to Isolation Bolt 1's location. And finally, if you wanted Bounty 3, you would have to go to Isolation Bolt 3's location to gain access to them. In order for you to see them, as I said, you must do all of the Isolation Bolts to be able to unlock these. And it's a permanent unlock, so once you unlock them once by completing the Isolation Bolt, they're unlocked for good. The downside is if you did isolation bolts a long time ago, was the last time, unfortunately you're going to have to do them again even if you ran them hundreds of times. So keep that in mind. But why would you even care about these bounties? Well, there are two exclusive weapons that are locked behind these bounties. You can't buy them from the market. You can't get them from your clan's dojo. In fact, the only other way you can acquire these is in trade chat. So it's either trade chat or you have to run these Arcana Bounties. The first weapon we'll talk about is the Sporothrix. Now this is a primary sniper rifle, infested style, and it's pretty damn good. Now you would acquire this particular weapon in the Arcana Bounty number 3. Now there are 4 parts for this. There is the main blueprint, the receiver, the stock, and the barrel. Next up we have the Aram Spinoza. Now this is a fan style melee weapon, and there are 3 parts for this: the main blueprint, the guard, and the rivet. But keep in mind you're going to need 2 guards to build these. As I said, these are going to be on Arcana Bounty number 2. So let's take a look very quickly at each of these bounties and see if there's anything else on these bounties you may be interested in aside from these weapons. So in order, as I said already, to find these bounties, you must go to their Isolation Bolts location. Isolation Bolt number 1 is just down the path that you come out of the Necrolisk. So as you come down the path here, you're going to go to the mother character's location here, which is marked on your map. Now, as you see, we have Isolation Bolt 1, and we have Arcana Bounty number 1. Now, pay attention to the rewards and what each of them have, because I'm going to make a point about this in a moment. So for common drops, we have the Z7 relics, which you can get any of these relics pretty much anywhere in the game. We have Necromech Redirection, which is an extremely common Necromech mod. We have Orokin Matrices. Now these are what you trade to Lloyd in this secret room inside the Necrolisk to increase your standing, as well as buy various goods. And finally we have Therium Dimmelson. Now we'll talk about these arcanes towards the end. For uncommon, we have the N13 relic. We have Necromech Reach, which for a melee Necromech like Bone Widow, you would probably want that mod. We have more Orokin Matrices, and we have Therium Infection, another arcane. And then finally, for rare, we have the Damaged Necromech Weapon Stock, which some of these could have been a real pain in the ass to get in the Isolation Bolt days. So they're also here on these bounties, and I'm going to talk about that more in a minute. We have another relic, P2. We have Necromech Thrusters, which if that's what you want on your build, you may want that mod. More Orokin Matrices, 3 Scintillants, and Therium Contagion, an arcane. Now, the 3 Scintillants could potentially be enticing, but if you were here from the beginning running Deimos, and specifically the Isolation Bolts, you probably got all the Scintillants you needed to build everything that required them. So, I don't really see that much draw here, but if you're interested in those, then here's another alternative to acquiring them. Now, Isolation Bolt 2 and 3 have swapped places. We're going to come all the way over here in this little cave area by Albrick's Prospect, as well as the Catabolic Gutter. And we're basically just going to drop straight down here. And you're going to look for the cave that has a bright light behind it right here. You're going to go to this mother's location. And as you can see, Isolation Bolt number 2 and the coinciding Arcana Bounty. Now the rewards on this are the Aram Spinoza Blueprint. That's the fan melee weapon. It says it's common, which unfortunately we have to call bullshit on this common drop. We have the P4 Relic. We have Necromech Blitz, which you may want on your Necromech build. We have more Aurican Matrices. We have Therum Dimilcent, the Arcane. For the uncommon, we have the Aram Spinoza Guard, which you need 2 of these, FYI. In 13 Relic, we have Necromech Drift, which you may want on your Necromech build. More Aurican Matrices, and another Therum Infection Arcane. For the rare drop, we have the Aram Spinoza Rivet, another relic, 05, damaged Necromech weapon stock, which I believe was the same exact damaged Necromech weapon part on Bounty 1, if I'm not mistaken. Necromech Seismic Wave, which you maybe want that mod for your Necromech build. More Aurican Matrices, and again, an Arcane Therum Contagion. And that is Arcana Bounty number 2. So let's go to Isolation Bolt number 3 and the final Arcana Bounty number 3. Now in order to find this particular location, you're going to be coming towards the path that you came out of the Necrolist, and you're going to turn left. And you're going to be looking for the brightly lit swamp here, because this is the mother location you're going to want to go to below me. And here's where we are. So we have the Abscess, and we have the Actuary's Pride here. So, here we go. Isolation Bolt number 3 and Arcana Bolt number 3. Now this is where you're going to get the Sporthrix. So for the common drops, we have another relic, T4, Necromech Fury, which again you're going to want for a melee or Necromech like Bone Widow probably. We have more Aurican Matrices. We have the Sporthrix Blueprint, which shows again is common, which is bullshit, which I'll talk more about that in a minute. We have the Therum Dimilcent Arcane again. For uncommon, we have another relic in 13, Necromech Friction, which you may want for that mod for your Necromech build. Aurican Matrices, the Sporthrix Stock, and Therum Infection, another Arcane. For rare, we have another relic, C6, a damaged Necromech Weapon Stock, yet again, for the 3rd time. Necromech Streamline, which you're probably going to want on pretty much any Necromech build. More Aurican Matrices, and finally, another Therum Contagion Arcane. Now, as you may have noticed, a lot, and this is really kind of the first problem with these bounties, is that there are a lot of the rewards that are in Bounty 1, Bounty 2, and Bounty 3. The issue with this is that, well, quite honestly, if I'm going up in level, the rewards should improve. They shouldn't stay the same. So the fact that Bounty 1 has the same exact rewards that Bounty 3 does, yeah, that's a problem. It's a very big problem. Now, the fact that they lock these exclusive weapons behind these bounties is a massive problem. Why? Because these bounties don't really hold anything for players that have been playing Deimos since launch. Now there's one potential saving grace for these bounties, and that would be if you have a player that has never interacted with Deimos, never played, done anything at all on Deimos, then these bounties are going to offer them a good alternative to the Isolation Bolts. If there's something they want, but they don't want to run the Isolation Bolts, they can run these bounties. So I think this is a potential alternative, if my tongue will work, for those players. Unfortunately, for those of us that have been here since Deimos' launch, these bounties serve no purpose for us. There's nothing of value, and if you're curious about the Arcanes, I'm going to be talking about that in a minute. So that's the first problem. Get the weapons out of there, dedicate these bounties strictly to players that are coming to Deimos for the first time, providing them an option, isolation bolts or bounties. And I think you have a winner. The sad reality is that by locking these weapons exclusively behind the Arcana Bounties, you're just creating work for work's sake. You've got to understand that if you expect a player to invest a large chunk of time and effort to earn a reward, the reward has got to match. But sadly, that's not the case, because for both the common drops, the Arum Spinoza and the Sporothrix, it says they are common. But that is bullshit. Let me give you an example. Now, when I first started doing these bounties, I decided to go for the Arum Spinoza parts first. After 20 plus runs, almost 30 runs, I came away with a grand whopping total of 0 parts, not even the common drop. So I thought this was just my historical bad luck in this game and went on to bounty number 3, where again I ran almost 30 runs on this bounty. Came away again with yet 0 weapon parts. Even the common part didn't drop. Now, I would have normally just, again, chalked this up to my historical bad luck, but then I started talking to different players. I talked to over 20 players that have ran these bounties, and a trend developed. In fact, they all said the very same thing. What was that? They said that they ran nearly 30 bounties and received none, or at most, 1 part. That was it. At which point, they washed their hands of these bounties and went straight to trade chat and spent their hard-earned plat to buy them rather than do these bounties. That speaks volumes about these bounties, that there's a definite issue if that's what players are doing. And that is what they're doing. I mean, let's just do a statistical breakdown, right? If it takes me 20 to 30 runs to get just the common part, then we can easily double that to get the uncommon part. So I'm going to have to do 20 to 30 runs to get the common part. I'm going to have to do an additional 40 to 60 runs to get the uncommon part. We can then double that for the rare part. So I'm going to have to do an additional 80 to 120 runs just to get the rare part. So the grand number of runs that I'm going to have to do of these bounties just to get one set of these parts is going to be 140 to 210 bounty runs. That's just one weapon. Double that to get both weapons. So you're looking at having to do 280 to 420 bounty runs just to get both weapons. 420? Yeah, that's a problem, to say the least. Get the weapons out of there, put them in a different event or mission type, and leave these bounties strictly as an option for players who are coming to Deimos for the first time. And I think you've got a winner on your hands. But before we declare this a victory, we've got some other problems. The first problem is, my God, these bounties are buggy as all hell. Let me run down a list of the common bugs that I would encounter more than a few occasions by running these bounties. The first, at some stage in these bounties, you're going to run into a little dude known as a polypog. Well, the polypog looks like a distant relation of the Juggernaut. Cute little fella. Buggy as all hell. Yeah, would actually end up just running in the same little spot back and forth. Not going anywhere, not doing anything. And after more than 20 minutes, I had to cave and abort the bounty. Well, I don't have to tell you guys and gals how frustrating it is if you're on the last stage or the next to the last stage of completing a bounty to have to abort it and start completely over again. Oh, but how I wish that was the only problem. At some stage in these bounties, you're going to encounter a control stage. Now, because this is done in the vaults, there are winding passages above you, below you, around you. The game will stupidly spawn enemies in some of these far-off passages. Now, I know you're thinking, well, just run and go take out the enemies. And typically I would concur with you on that assessment. However, there's no typical straight shot to get to these enemies. You have to go through a winding canal to get to the enemies. Well, the game, of course, is going to say you're abandoning the objective before you get to the enemies. So now you're left with one of two options, both of which are going to risk a bounty failure. The first is you try to run down this winding passage to get to these enemies and take them out and get back before you abort the mission, air quotes, and fail the bounty. Or you cross your fingers, cross your toes, cross your eyeballs, and hope like hell that the timer runs out and you successfully complete the capture before the enemies do. And you fail the bounty yet again. Again, I wish I could say that these were the only problems, but alas, they weren't. Another common problem that I ran into more than a few times was this hodgepodge mixture of other missions, and essentially what you would do is you would destroy 3 tumors, similar to what you would see in an infested hive mission. Then you would run over to this Andrade device and collect this charge, get as many enemies gathered around you as you can, then throw said charge at these enemies, marking them. Now, once these enemies are dead, they count towards a counter, and the objective is to kill 15 marked enemies in 3 charges or less. Sounds simple enough. However, apparently not for the game. Apparently math is not its strong suit, because on more than a few occasions, I would turn around, throw a charge at a large group of enemies, only to have the game say, yeah, those marked enemies don't count. So very rarely could I ever complete the bonus objective because the game just flat out wouldn't count these marked enemies. Now, I have no problem failing a mission on my own. That is my own failing. I need to adapt, I need to improve, and if I still lose because of myself, then I have more work that I need to do, and I have no problem with that. But when I fail a objective or a bonus objective because the game sabotages me, again, I don't have to tell you how pissed off you could potentially become. Oh, but don't let me forget the Arcanes. Oh, yes, the Arcanes, because I'm sure some of you out there are saying, well, yeah, peace. Arcanes are good, right? No, some Arcanes are good. Some Arcanes are just dog shit. Where do these Arcanes fall? Well, basically the way these work is you would have... Well, there's just too many stipulations for these Arcanes. The first stipulation is that you must run a kit gun. Must. You don't want to? Too damn bad. Be it primary or secondary, you must run a kit gun. And then, of course, you would affix one of these Arcanes onto your kit gun. But you're not done yet. No. The other requirement is you must run a aligning or coinciding Arcane on your Warframe. So yes, you're now losing a Arcane slot on your Warframe. Just for your kit gun. Again, too many stipulations. Too many requirements. I have to run a kit gun? Then I have to lose an Arcane slot? But what do these Arcanes do? Alright, so let's see. Essentially what you're going to do is you're going to take out an enemy with your kit gun. When the Arcane triggers and you stand in the zone, it's also going to trigger the Arcane on your Warframe. So if you're thinking, by the way, of running just one of these Arcanes and skipping the one on your Warframe, well then don't even bother running these Arcanes because they're not worth it unless you run both. If I can find some enemies and get this 10% chance to trigger, I will be better off here. Let's see. Need some enemies. unfortunately, it doesn't seem like enemies in the air trigger this, so sadly that does not work. Beat these things. Ah, here we go. So there is my arcane triggered from my kit gun. Now you see this swirling thing around me. That's my arcane on my Warframe being triggered. So there is a pool. Standing in it triggers the arcane on my Warframe, and so on and so forth. So, running just one of these arcanes, obviously, it's just not worth it unless you run both. But even then, the requirements are just too damn stringent. You know, if it was a little bit easier to get these to trigger, or maybe if it was just one arcane, then I can potentially see the benefit. And don't get me wrong, I appreciate DE's creativity here. Albeit this was tried with mods as well. If you remember your pets, you would equip a pet on an arcane on your pet. This would generate kind of a field, and you would stand in it with a proper mod equipped on your Warframe. Again, just too many requirements. The same thing here. It didn't work with the mods on your pets, and I doubt very seriously it's going to work with the arcanes on your kit gun and your Warframe. So that's yet another problem. Again, I can appreciate the creativity, but again, I sincerely doubt that these arcanes are ever going to become of great value or significance in the game. So these are all of the problems that I encountered with these Arcana Bounties. Again, I think that there is an argument to be made for an alternative to players coming to Deimos for the first time, and I think that's a good thing. Believe me, I was here when Deimos initially launched, and I remember the grind of the isolation vaults. I remember having to gut it out to get necromech parts, and to get necromech weapon parts, and to get necromech mods, and to get scintillants. I remember doing it. I remember what a chore it was. These bounties could potentially be a good thing for players coming to Deimos for the first time. Locking the weapons behind it, however, piss poor decision. But I think that that's easily rectified. If you fix the bugs, if you fix how clunky this is, you put some varying rewards in these bounties. Again, you shouldn't have the same rewards in Bounty 1 that you do in Bounty 3, or Bounty 2 that in Bounty 3, or Bounty 1 and 2. You fix that, you fix the clunkiness, the glitchiness, you remove the weapons from here, and again, I think we could probably declare a little bit of a victory here. Otherwise, I don't really have anything positive to say about this, sadly. I mean, I normally like to say very positive things, you know, point out the positive attributes of something, but as I said at the beginning of the video, I can't with a good conscience do that. But those are kind of my thoughts about the Arcana Bounties. What do you guys and gals think? I love hearing from you guys and gals, and I respond to everybody that does. And until next time, peace out.